All right, let's get into it. We're talking about something truly awful today, the case known as the She in Taiwan.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that just hits you hard. A 1-year-old boy. The details are grim.
Grim is an understatement. Allegedly horrific abuse by his caregivers, leading to his death. It caused this massive nationwide outcry. People were furious.
Totally. I mean, over 130,000 people signed a petition. That's huge. And protests right outside the presidential office. People demanding change immediately.
You can't blame them. It really shook people's faith in the system meant to protect kids.
Definitely. So for this deep dive, we've gone through a lot of material analyses of the case, the role of the Child Welfare League, or UUCHA.
We'll be saying that name a lot, I suspect.
Probably. And also looking at the government's response, like this draft Children and Child Care Services Act, the RUTHALs, are you?
Right. So our goal here is basically to unpack what went wrong, like fundamentally wrong.
Exactly. To understand the systemic failures this tragedy exposed and look at the proposed fixes. Can Taiwan build a stronger safety net for kids?
We want to give you the key takeaways, cut through the noise and get to the heart of the issues without needing a PhD in Taiwanese social policy.
Think of it as the essential guide to understanding this whole mess.
Okay, so roadmap. We'll cover the timeline, the horrific details of the abuse, the court outcome, then the big one, the failures within the system, especially the Child Welfare League.
And then broaden out to the wider weaknesses in Taiwan's child protection setup.
And finally, we'll dissect the proposed reforms. Are they real solutions or just, window dressing?
Sounds like a plan. It's a lot to cover, but it's crucial stuff. Where do we start? The timeline.
Yeah, let's lay out the sequence of events. It starts September 1st, 2023. That's when Tuna was placed with the nanny, Miss Liu Kai-swan, through the Child Welfare League.
And the period from September to December 2023, that's when the alleged abuse happened. Continuous, awful abuse.
Leading to the absolute worst outcome. His death on December 24th, 2023, Christmas Eve. Just devastating.
The legal response was actually quite fast, which probably reflects the sheer public pressure.
And it became the first child abuse case tried by citizen judges in Taiwan. That's a big deal in itself.
Right. So the trial started around April 22nd, 2024. We think the source saying 2025 was likely a typo, by the way.
Yeah, makes sense. Then, April 30th, 2024, Miss Liu gives a partial confession.
And the final verdict came down on May 13th, 2024.
And the sentence is pretty severe.
Very. Mrs. Liu Kai-swan got life in prison for aggravated child abuse resulting in death. Her sister, Mrs. Liu Ruolin, got 18 years for negligent injury.
Though some reports suggested this sister might have been more involved, maybe co-intentional abuse.
That was part of the discussion, yeah. And remember, the decision involved 6 citizen judges alongside 3 professionals. It shows a shift towards community involvement in these cases.
Okay, so that's the tragic timeline. Now, we have to talk about the nature of the alleged abuse. And just a warning, this is really tough stuff.
It really is. The allegations are just stomach-churning. Binding him with cloth like a mummy.
Beatings, forcing a 1-year-old to stand for hours, twice a day, feeding him kitchen scraps, cold water baths. It's monstrous.
And this isn't just speculation. There's significant evidence.
Let's break that down. What did the medical evidence show?
The direct cause of death was shock from internal bleeding, subcutaneous hemorrhage. But contributing factors were malnutrition and pneumonia. That points to prolonged neglect and abuse.
So, not a single incident.
Definitely not. The autopsy found extensive injuries, old and new, bruising all over head, face, chest, back, bleeding under the skin consistent with being bound and forced to stand.
And the forensic conclusion?
Homicide due to external force. No ambiguity there.
And then there was a witness.
Yes, a foreign caregiver living in the same building. She testified seeing the forced standing, seeing him being fed leftovers, hearing crying and sounds of beatings.
And she had photos.
She did. Powerful evidence. Plus, digital evidence from Miss Liu's own phone photos and messages showing inappropriately tied up.
It paints a really grim, undeniable picture.
And beyond the physical, the psychological trauma, medical reports mention depression and PTSD in a 1-year-old.
PTSD, how could you even tell?
Fearful expressions, vacant eyes, slow, listless movements, signs of a child living in constant fear.
God, that's awful. The source rightly points out how crucial the medical professionals were in documenting all this.
Well, absolutely critical. Their careful work preserving evidence was key to establishing what happened.
Okay, so the evidence was strong. Let's talk about the court's decision and accountability. Why the severe sentences?
The court's reasoning was damning. They found it was joint intentional abuse of a child, and the motive was taking pleasure in abuse.
Taking pleasure, that's chilling.
Yeah.
Pure malice.
It is. And that finding has huge implications for how we screen caregivers, doesn't it?
You'd think. It screams for more than just a background check. Like serious psychological evaluations, maybe. Especially for kids referred by institutions.
Exactly. Standard checks clearly weren't enough here. We need much deeper assessments to identify individuals who are fundamentally unfit for this role.
And remind us about the defendant's stances again.
Mrs. Liu Kai-swan initially denied it, then partially confessed. Her sister, Mrs. Li Ruolin, denied involvement throughout.
But the sentences ultimately matched what the prosecution wanted.
Yes, pretty much. Life for the main abuser, 18 years for the sister. It sent a strong message, especially with the citizen judges involved.
Right, so individuals held accountable. But this case wasn't just about them, was it? It blew the lid off systemic problems.
Oh, absolutely. This goes way beyond two individuals. It exposed major flaws in the whole child welfare framework.
Let's start with the Child Welfare League. The UJOM, they were responsible for his placement and supervision. What went wrong there?
Catastrophically wrong, it seems. They had a fundamental duty of care, and the failures were, well, numerous.
Like, what specifically?
Ignoring obvious warning signs, the bruising, the weight loss, the fearfulness, the developmental delays. The social worker apparently just accepted the nanny's ridiculous explanations.
Explanations like he just bumps into things for severe bruising on a baby. Come on.
It beggars belief, either total incompetence or something worse. And the visits.
What about the visits?
Protocol requires regular, unannounced visits, especially for high-risk cases. But all 3 visits here were prearranged.
So the nanny knew exactly when the social worker was coming. Defeats the whole purpose.
Completely. It's just checking a box, no real oversight. And despite the red flags, they didn't increase the visit frequency.
And they weren't honest with the family.
Apparently not. They allegedly kept the grandmother in the dark about how bad things were: the weight loss, losing teeth, hair loss.
While telling her he was doing fine, that's betrayal.
A profound betrayal. And then there are allegations of falsifying records, even colluding with supervisors to cover things up during the investigation.
Wow. If that's true, it points to a culture problem, not just individual mistakes. Protecting the organization over the child.
That's certainly the implication. It makes their claims of being duped by the nanny ring pretty hollow.
Especially since the nanny apparently asked for help, said she couldn't cope.
Yes. Reports say she told the social worker tour was difficult, that she was overwhelmed, maybe he should go back or see professionals, and they just ignored it.
That's a massive failure of support for the caregiver, too. And didn't the grandmother want him placed elsewhere?
She did. There was a previous caregiver, Mrs. Zhu, who the grandmother preferred and who was willing. But the league apparently didn't explore financial aid to make that happen.
They just stuck to policy and handed him over to Mrs. Liu. Whose interests were they serving?
It raises serious questions about whether bureaucratic procedures trump the child's actual needs and relationships.
So the league has apologized and promised reforms, right? Double visits for high-risk cases, retraining.
Yes, the standard post-crisis promises. More visits, better training, improved reporting. They've also called for bigger system changes, like a central child agency.
But is it enough? Can internal tweaks fix what seems like a deep-rooted problem?
That's the million-dollar question. Many argue it's just scratching the surface, because the problems are wider than just one organization.
Right. Let's talk about those broader issues in Taiwan's system, like lack of support and supervision for caregivers in general.
Definitely. This case highlights failures in screening, training, ongoing monitoring, and, crucially, supporting caregivers dealing with high-needs kids. How did someone allegedly motivated by pleasure and abuse get approved?
It's terrifying. And then there's that insane loophole about major child abuse incidents.
Ah, yes. The definition only included family or guardians, not non-relatives like nannies.
Which meant Toe's case didn't trigger the high-level emergency response it should have, because the abuser was just the nanny.
Precisely. The system wasn't alerted at the right level, delaying the government's awareness and response. A fatal flaw in definition.
That's not a loophole, that's a crater. How could that happen?
It shows a failure to prioritize the child's safety regardless of the abuser's label. It also connects to concerns about outsourcing social welfare services, this surge model.
Farming out vital services, what are the risks there?
Inadequate government oversight, potential conflicts between quality and contract targets. Inconsistency, blurred lines of responsibility.
A blame game when things go wrong.
Exactly. And potential conflicts of interest in how these services are evaluated. The League's failures seem to mirror these risks perfectly.
And underpinning all this is the issue of overworked social workers, right?
Yes. While not quantified in our source, it's a known chronic problem. Huge caseloads, not enough staff, burnout. It inevitably leads to oversights.
You just can't give proper attention when you're stretched that thin. Okay, so the system's broken. What's the government doing or saying they'll do? MOHW.
The Ministry of Health and Welfare rolled out 6 major enhanced measures. Things like earlier public intervention in adoptions, stronger supervision of placement agencies.
And surprise visits. That's good.
Yes, specific guidelines for graded and surprise visits. Plus, enhancing professional sensitivity, increasing staff in home-based care centers, and better network cooperation, including pediatric specialists.
Getting doctors more involved makes sense. Are they talking about a dedicated child protection agency?
They're considering it, along with more full-time child protection pediatricians, also improving child mortality reviews and injury prevention.
Sounds promising,
But as the source notes, effectiveness depends on fixing the underlying issues. Staff shortages, workloads, poor coordination between departments. Otherwise, it's just rearranging deck chairs.
yeah, fixing the symptoms, not the disease. What about the new law, the Children and Child Care Services Act?
The goal is to strengthen the legal framework, especially for kids under 2. It proposes raising standards for home-based caregivers, more transparency for institutions, tougher penalties for maltreatment.
Okay, stronger penalties, better standards. What else?
And the controversial bit, mandatory surveillance cameras with cloud storage in childcare facilities.
Ah, the cameras. Big brother concerns.
Big time. Privacy, data security, potential misuse. Does it erode trust? Is it just a tech fix that ignores the root causes like poor training and support?
The surveillance is panacea trap. Our Table 2 mentions experts worry it focuses on centers and misses home-based care, like where Churro was.
Exactly. It might create a false sense of security. Then there's the ongoing call for a central, dedicated child protection agency.
Like the UK's Children's Commissioner, to coordinate everything.
Right. To overcome the current fragmented system where responsibility is split across ministries, leading to gaps and inefficiency.
Makes logical sense. A single body focused only on kids. MOHW says they're looking into it.
They mention existing committees and are assessing a dedicated unit. But public demand is strong for a truly independent, high-level agency.
Okay, given all these problems and proposals, what are the big comprehensive recommendations coming out of this?
Several key things. First, much stronger oversight, accountability, transparency. Independent third-party audits of all providers with public results.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Absolutely. And fixing that major incident definition, immediately focus on harm and risk, not the abuser's relationship. Plus, a real accountability framework with consequences when systems fail kids.
Needs teeth. What else?
Big focus on professionals. Deeper, ongoing training for social workers, especially in risk assessment. Overhauling caregiver, screening psych evaluations, regular reviews, better training.
And tackling the workload.
Crucial. Rationalize caseloads, hire more staff, improve pay and conditions. You can't expect quality work from burnt-out people.
Treat them like the vital professionals they are. Makes sense. Collaboration.
Yes, a powerful central coordination hub, a secure cross-departmental information sharing platform so professionals can connect the dots earlier.
Like doctors, teachers, social workers all talking to each other.
Exactly, and strengthening those medical early warning systems, getting pediatricians trained and involved systematically.
What about the laws themselves?
Carefully implement the new Child Care Act, balancing safety and privacy, focusing on caregiver quality over just surveillance. Review all existing laws based on the lessons from this case, tougher penalties for abusers, clearer agency responsibilities, standardize handover procedures when kids move between caregivers.
Seems thorough. But it's not just about laws and agencies, is it?
No, there's a huge cultural piece, fostering a society that truly values child protection, zero tolerance for abuse, public education, teaching kids about their rights and self-protection in schools.
And changing the culture inside the agencies, too.
Definitely. Prioritizing kids' best interests, transparency, accountability above everything else. It's a massive shift needed, top to bottom. Our Table 3 maps these recommendations directly to the identified weaknesses.
It's a huge undertaking,
Yeah.
a necessary one, clearly. So, wrapping up this really difficult conversation, what are the core takeaways?
The tragedy revealed deep interconnected failures. Supervision, definitions, oversight, screening, support, communication, resources. The proposed reforms aim to fix these, but it requires a comprehensive approach.
And it really brings home that protecting children is everyone's job, right? Not just the government's or specific agencies. It's a societal responsibility.
It truly is. And maybe the thought to leave everyone with is this. The public anger after Toe's death created this moment, this demand for change.
A critical juncture, you called it.
Exactly. The real test now is whether this becomes a true turning point. Will Taiwan translate this tragedy into lasting, systemic reforms that build a genuinely protective environment for every single child? Or will the outrage fade and the system revert? That's the question we all need to keep asking.